Hello everyone. Um, sorry I was running a tiny bit late, but I'm here now. Um, Hi Lonjade, hi Henry. Yeah, I am so excited. I can't believe we're finishing this volume today. I'm sad about how long we'll be away from QJJ after this, but I'm really excited to finish it and see how this volume wraps up. Um, Today we have, I think we just have, um, no, we have 4 chapters to read, but they're short. So we're gonna have possibly slightly shorter reading time, but then we'll have time at the end to just talk about all the QJJ that has happened for a little bit before we just go away for like 4 months and, do something else. Um, yes, bring in the wine. Pass the yaoi and bring in the wine. Exactly, Henry. Um, so I'm super not centered in the camera, but anyway, I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I was getting set up for the stream and then like I was trying to move uh my phone and then like the whole tripod shifted and I had to go under my desk and fix it, and I was just like, I'm good. I'm done now. Every possible thing that could like happen before stream to stall me getting ready. Like aside from me just getting distracted, it was just like it's gonna happen today. Um oh, Henry, Macioli. I don't know how to say that, but that's pear blossom white wine. Have you had that before? It sounds really, really good. Like, I really want to try pear blossom wine. Um, God, so what even happened last time? um, we Xiaoqia and Shenzi actually reunited, and Xiaoqia just kind of, it was like really sudden the way that Xiaoqia showed up. Um, and they're together now again. Because you know what? I was a little bit worried that we were going to get to the end of this book and they weren't going to be together yet. I was kind of thinking that was going to happen. So I'm really glad that they're together again. Um, Henry, it's a Korean drink that was really popular a while ago. Apparently it's the same thing or almost the same. That is very cool. And yes, the gays, the main ones. um, well, I am gonna get started. We are on page 349 for chapter 143, which is called Hiding. I'm like, why is this chapter called Hiding? But okay. Xiao Chie was running hot. After riding half the night, he was drenched in sweat. He reluctantly released Shen Zichuan and continued removing his armor. Ooh, is it called hiding because Shen Zichuan is still hiding how sick he is? Even from Xiao Chie? Henry. Well, that too. As Shen Zichuan sat up, Xiao Chie asked, "Have you eaten tonight? I'll have something to tide me over. I met the courier delivering your letter on my way, so I intercepted him. I've got it with me." Shen Zichuan, who had been about to get out of bed, paused. He leaned over and watched Xiao Chie with a hint of seduction in his gaze. "Where do you put it?" Raising a finger, Xiao Chie tapped his chest. Shen Zichuan extended his right hand expectantly. Xiao Chie set his armor down and planted his hands on his knees, glancing up at Shen Zichuan. "Want it back? Come get me. Come get it." Shen Zichuan felt a tingle arc down his spine under Xiao Qia's gaze. He placed his hand on Xiao Qia's chest and slid his fingers downward. All he could feel were the hard lines of Xiao Qia's sweat-drenched torso. He whispered as if he hadn't understood. "Give it back." He still had the dazed look of a person not fully awake, yet his fingertips were feeling their way across Xiao Qia's body with ease and familiarity. They wandered, teasingly light. He didn't mind letting Xiao Qia know his drowsy appearance was merely an act. Xiao Qia deliberately slowed his breathing, afraid he would forget to restrain himself and devour Shen Zichuan in an instant. He appeared unmoved, pursuing Shen Zichuan with only an ardent gaze. Shen Zichuan ran his hand all over that sturdy torso, his breath intertwining with Xiao Qia's as he moved in. They pressed closer, Xiao Qia hovering over him on the bed. Shen Zichuan's expressive eyes glimmered with ripples of desire as he murmured, "Sa'an, I can't find it." Xiao Qia allowed Shen Zichuan's fingers to roam as they pleased. He tilted his head slightly, catching a hint of Shen Zichuan's scent. Shen Zichuan seized the opening and pressed his cheek into him, nuzzling gently at his jaw. The satisfaction brimming in the corners of his eyes gripped Xiao Qia's heart and squeezed. Still sweating, Xiao Qia laughed out loud, a short, sharp sound. He set his hand on the small of Shen Zichuan's back, pulling him so close Shen Zichuan was plastered against him in his embrace. There was no air between them as their lips met. Shen Zichuan kissed Xiao Qia, who bit him in return. As Shen Zichuan was pinned down into the sheets, he swiftly grabbed the nape of Xiao Qia's neck with his injured left hand. Oh, we drink when napes are mentioned, even when it is Xiao Qia's nape. The bedding dipped under their weight. Shen Zichuan's inner garment hung open in disarray. As Xiao Qia knelt over him, eyes fixed on Shen Zichuan, a fan fell out of his robes. Shen Zichuan's fingers had only just closed around the fan when he saw the letter fall out after it. Xiao Qia's hand shot out, but the sharp-eyed Shen Zichuan deftly used the fan to push the letter to the edge of the bed. He flipped the fan and rested it against Xiao Qia's chin, gently lifting his jaw, and planted a kiss on Xiao Qia's lips. Absorbed in the kiss, Xiao Qia seemed not to notice the letter. His arousal had become impossible to ignore. Not to pause on this, but I wonder if the letter says something. Oh yeah, because the letter presumably maybe says something about Shen Zichuan being sick, and he's probably like, I don't want Xiao Qia to see that right now. That's just bad timing. They had been apart a long time, and now that they were reunited, Xiao Qia indulged Shen Zichuan's urge to tease him. He caressed Shen Zichuan until he was flushed all over, then took him until waves of passion crashed over Shen Zichuan, and he trembled uncontrollably. Narrowing his eyes, Shen Zichuan reminded himself, with his last scraps of rationality, to toss the letter under the bed later. Yet before he could finish formulating his plan, Xiao Qia flipped him over. He held Shen Zichuan's waist, admiring the contours of his back and the exquisite curve of his spine. Shen Zichuan's inner garment had gone translucent with sweat. From behind, it appeared to offer an unobstructed glimpse of the picturesque view beneath. Yet that tempting expanse was still shrouded under a thin mist of white, distant and unattainable. Shen Zichuan looked back over his shoulder, wetting his lips. Xiaojie went on the offensive, seizing his territory. All of this belonged to him. The scorching heat, the damp sweat, the soft moans and the look in his eyes, the fine shivers that racked his limbs. Even the scent Shen Zichuan emitted along with the rocking of their bodies. He claimed all of it. It was all his, Xiaoqie's. The mere thought broke open a limitless well of exhilaration inside him. Shen Zichuan knew him too well. Every sultry look he gave struck true. Xiaoqie's passion made him forceful. The more he cherished this man, the more terrifying his strength as he moved. He wanted to hold him so tight it crushed him to pieces. Xiaoqie mouthed at Shen Zichuan's right ear, holding the jade bead between his lips. Face down in the sheet, Shen Zichuan was pushed to the edge. Xiaoqie was so deep inside him that his sweat and tears stained the bedsheets, but there was nowhere for him to escape. Henry, you were correct. You were more correct than you could have known. His hips and ankles were restrained, as though with a heavy chain under Xiaoqie's weight. He ached and even felt a little pain, yet that pain sent sparks of electricity through his body, rendering it pleasantly numb. It banished every thought of his nightmares. There was only Xiaoqie, Xiaoqie, Xiaoqie. Shen Zichuan shivered, drenched in sweat. In the moment before he let himself fall apart, he murmured, "Tsa'an." Xiaoqie was nowhere close to done. Yet, at Shen Zichuan's soft, languid call, his hips stuttered as he came. Body limp, Shen Zichuan buried his head in his arms and gasped desperately for breath, still trembling in the aftermath. The bedding under his knees was wet. Xiaoqie bent over and covered Shen Zichuan's back with his broad chest. He had yet to pull out, and as he pressed forward, he advanced deeper instead of retreating, dragging a muffled moan from Shen Zichuan. Xiaoqie brushed aside the mess of pillows and enveloped him with his body. "I'll sleep better with you in my arms." Shen Zichuan's earlobes were red from 100 bites, and Xiaoqie's hot breath made them simultaneously numb and sore. He lifted his cheek from his arms, his eyes red-rimmed and wet as he mouthed, "You're so mean." Without moving, Xiaoqie kissed him, lips soft and still. Only then did their ravenous appetites begin to settle. Shen Zichuan was bearing all of Xiaoqie's weight, yet he felt strangely relaxed, as if the mere presence of Xiaoqie at his back was an impenetrable shield. Xiaoqie ran a hand down Shen Zichuan's side. He understood this man all too well. He could tell exactly how much weight Shen Zichuan had lost just by holding him. He nudged a lock of hair by Shen Zichuan's ear aside with the tip of his nose and murmured, "Did everything go smoothly in Chazhou? You've gotten thinner again." Shen Zichuan thought for a moment and shook his head. "What happened with Luo Mu? Did he give you attitude?" Xiaoqie probed. Pursing his lips tightly, Shen Zichuan continued shaking his head. Xiaoqie exhaled a puff of warm breath and teased, "Did those Chazhou bandits make trouble for you? I'll send the Imperial Army over right away." Shen Zichuan's eyes were half-lidded. "It's from missing you." Shen Zichuan didn't wait for him to answer before he went on. "I get cold sleeping alone on an empty bed." Xiaoqie held him tighter, grasping both of Shen Zichuan's wrists. He was about to reply when he caught a glimpse of white out of the corner of his eye. He pulled out the left hand Shen Zichuan had kept hidden under the blankets and turned it over, exposing the gauze wrapped around it. His eyes shifted to Shen Zichuan. Shen Zichuan buried his head in the bedsheets. Shen Lanzhou. Xiao Qia pulled Shen Zichuan's face around by the chin and said, enunciating each word, "You sure know how to hide things, hmm?" Bright and early the next morning, Chao Tianya retrieved Snowcrest from outside the city walls. When he arrived back at the manor, he saw Meng striding around by himself under the eaves. He whistled at the gerfalcon and asked quietly, "Where's your master?" Meng paid him no mind and went about his business. Chao Tianya saw that the bamboo blinds in the main room had been partially lifted, but there were no attendants waiting under the eaves. The spacious room was bright inside. Shen Zichuan sat behind the desk, holding a book before his face, revealing only a pair of eyes that peered across the desk at Xiao Qia. Xiao Qia had one of his long legs propped up as he leaned back in his chair, rotating his thumb ring. I think we have to drink it. Long legs mentioned as well. At the sound of Chao Tianya's footsteps, he said without looking back, "Get in here." This is the funniest word choice. Whoever translated this. Noting the queer atmosphere, Chao Tianya ducked under the blinds to enter and asked with a smile, "Nice day, isn't it? How about lunch in the courtyard?" When Xiao Qia didn't answer, Shen Zichuan glanced over and motioned for Chao Tianya to continue. "You. Shut up," Xiao Qia said. Chao Tianya sensibly shut his mouth and looked at Shen Zichuan with an expression that said, "I can't help you." Xiao Qia worried the notch on his thumb ring with a finger, remembering yet another matter. "Call Ding Tao over." Ding Tao was standing at the courtyard entrance when he saw Chao Tianya step onto the veranda and beckon him. Reluctant to go on in, he clasped his hands behind his back and rubbed at the fresh mud between his fingers, then shuffled over at a snail's pace to the bottom of the steps. Gripped by an inexplicable fear, he craned his neck forward and said in a small voice, "I'm here." "Get your ass in here, now," barked Xiao Qia. Ding Tao leapt up the rest of the steps, then slowed as he cautiously made his way inside. When he saw Chao Tianya standing in the corner pretending to be a wooden stump and Shen Zichuan staring at a book, he felt certain he was in for a beating. "Where did the frogs in the pond come from?" Xiao Qia asked. Hands behind his back, Ding Tao looked down at his shoes and answered, "Caught them outside the city." "It must have been hard catching them out there and bringing them all the way back home, said Xiao Qia. "That's quite a distance." Ding Tao braced himself. Not too bad?" "When no one's home, you just do whatever you want, yes?" Xiao Qia sneered. "I had the pond cleaned just before I left, and you turn around and throw frogs into it." He had merely caught them for fun. Ding Tao had initially planned to put them in his own courtyard, but there was no pond there. Besides, Shen Zichuan wasn't home 2 weeks ago, so he and Li Xiong had caught a whole bunch and tossed them into the pond, only to forget about them a few days later. He'd never guessed his master would return so suddenly. Ding Tao stole a glance at Shen Zichuan and mourned his own demise. "Who are you looking at?" Xiao Qia demanded. Ding Tao instantly lowered his head again, timid as a quail. "Go," Xiao Qia continued. "I want them out of there by nightfall. If I hear a single croak tonight, I'll get someone to fish them up, bring them to your room, and make you sleep with them for company." How would Ding Tao dare raise any objections? He nodded vigorously, then leapt up and dashed out to the veranda, shouting, "Big Bear!" Catching himself, He belatedly covered his mouth and whispered in a tiny voice, "Come catch the frogs." Shen Zichuan shifted in his seat, holding the book steadily before his eyes. Xiao Qia's eyes never left him, although he addressed his question to Chao Tianya. "What happened in Chazhou? Your master couldn't tell me the whole story, so I'll have it from you." Chao Tianya scratched his head. He was beginning to envy Fei Sheng, who'd been left behind in Chazhou. Chao Tianya had slept well last night, but he had been neglecting his appearance lately, and had not taken time to shave his stubble. He stood in the harsh morning light and recited everything that happened in Chazhou as concisely as possible, leaving nothing out. He didn't even hide Shen Zichuan's illness. If Xiao Qia hadn't returned, then any omissions in Chao Tianya's reports could be excused as carried out under Shen Zichuan's orders. But now that Xiao Qia was back, Chao Tianya took the opportunity to come clean. When he had finished, he didn't wait for further instructions before adding, "They're still discussing the trade agreement with Chazhou over at the Zhou Manor. Since Master is staying home today, I'd best be off." With that, he ducked past the bamboo blinds and fled with extraordinary speed. Shen Zichuan had hardly slept a wink the night before and felt himself nodding off as he read. He glanced over at Xiao Qia once again. When he saw Xiao Qia looking back, he blinked as though he had only just noticed his eyes on him. He was putting on a rather convincing act. He was met with silence. Shen Zichuan let the book slip down and revealed his face. "Ah, yeah, I'm so hungry." Xiao Qia folded up the opened letter and stuffed it back under his shirt, in the same place it had occupied before. Stretching his leg out, Shen Zichuan stepped lightly on the tip of Xiao Qia's shoe. He set the book aside and bent over the table, his toe nudging up along Xiao Qia's calf. Xiao Qia stared at him and said callously from across the table, "You've knifed me in the heart and ripped my insides to shreds. It's too late, Shen Lanzhou. I'm dead." Well, damn. That's the end of the chapter. We are on page 359 for chapter 144, which is called Orange Jasmine. I love that Orange Jasmine is like, that's their flowers now. That's the flower motif that we get in this series. Or wait, well, we have Orange Jasmine now. Before that we had, was it peonies? Or some kind of red flower? Either way, I'm really digging all of the flower imagery. Xiao Qia had rushed back to Cizhou on horseback and could only stay a single night. He had to head back after midnight. He was on a tight schedule, and in order to ensure that the transportation of supplies to the battlefield was not delayed, he had been on the road for 8 or 9 days in a row, running himself ragged, all to squeeze out 2 extra days to come see Shen Zichuan. Yet he hadn't expected to end up so angry. There's an exclamation mark there. Holding Meng, Xiao Qia removed the anklet from the gerfalcon's leg before putting it back on again. Meng flapped his wings and threw a tantrum. Xiao Qia wanted to throw a tantrum too. He was deeply vexed and grew angrier the more he thought about it. When Ji Gong returned from his stroll with his birdcage in hand, he was taken aback to see Xiao Qia. After a moment of hesitation, he entered. Xiao Qia paid his respects. The war in the north is at a critical point. Ji Gong handed over the birdcage. Xiao Qia was so tall, Ji Gong had to look up at him to speak. Your Shifu must be worn out. Xiaoqia hung the cage up in the eaves. The fighting's been rough on him. Shifu thinks of you all the time and mentions you often. Jigong folded his hands behind his back. I've never fought a battle, so I can't offer any help. You must have rushed to get back here. Have you attended to some urgent matter? Not yet, Xiaoqia thought, but he answered aloud. Since Tizhou has generously given me the Beiyuan hunting grounds, I intend to use it as the Imperial Army's home base. I came back to ask Lanzhou about the progress of the construction. Once it's completed, I'll send someone over to take charge. Jigong knew these were all matters the two of them had spoken about at length, so he nodded and didn't pry further. It was rare for Xiaoqia to come across Jigong alone, so he seized his chance. Did Lanzhou fall ill on the way to Chazhou? Shifu, he's such a picky eater. With you at home keeping an eye on him, he'll at least taste a little of each dish and take his medicine when he's ill. But when he's out traveling, everyone defers to him. Without someone watching over him, he only eats what he likes. This promptly reminded Jigong of his own concerns on this subject. That's right. I meant to give him a piece of my mind yesterday. He deflected the topic on purpose. Xiaoqia finally left off tormenting Meng and lifted his arm to let him fly off. He feels guilty. Of course he wishes to keep quiet about it. Jigong nodded, but something still didn't feel right. Why would he feel guilty? Is Chuan-Er hiding something else from me? He most certainly is, Xiaoqia said with a slight furrow of his brow. That gash on his left hand is so deep, and the journey back was long. They didn't change the dressing frequently enough. When I saw it last night, his palm was almost festering. The color drained from Jigong's face. Where is he now? Sleeping. Xiaoqia paused for a moment. He barely slept last night, and he was worn out from traveling. He woke up exhausted this morning. Shifu, you'll have to keep an eye on him, in case he doesn't take his health seriously. I'm far away in Libei, and so much of what I hear depends on what he shares in his letters. If he chooses to keep something from me, I'll be completely in the dark. Jigong straightened up. I'll personally watch him change the dressing. He thought some more and sighed. He never recuperated fully during our days in the Temple of Guilt. The physicians we called were a useless lot who couldn't provide a diagnosis. His body is weaker than others. The more time passes, the more care he must take with his health. You remember, when he entered the capital, he first endured torture in the imperial prison, and then a flogging, and your kick. Oh, I knew he was going to bring this up. And your kick. What a brutal kick that was. If not for my old acquaintances in the embroidered uniform guard, helping in secret, Chuan-Er would be long dead. His health was terribly fragile then, and to keep his abilities hidden, he took that medicine. Now I worry day and night. I'm afraid for him. Xiaoqia was quiet a moment. Then, without warning, he lifted the hem of his robe and dropped to his knees. He set both palms squarely on the ground and kowtowed to Jigong. What are you doing? Asked Jigong, stunned. Xiaoqia spoke with his head to the ground. 6 years ago, when I rode my horse through Zhongbo, the man I hated the most in the world was Shen Wei. I despised him for abandoning the cities and fleeing, and I was worried the Empress Dowager would prop up his son as a puppet in the court, so I kicked Lanzhou and Chudu. Shifu is right. It was a brutal kick, one meant to take his life. Jigong choked, momentarily tongue-tied. Afraid Shen Zichuan could hear them from inside, he turned his head away and sighed heavily. Xiaoqia continued. It's my fault Lanzhou is in such ill health today. There are no capable physicians in Zhongbo. I've invited the venerable Master Yidong to come examine him. At the end of autumn, when the fighting subsides, my Shifu will come take his pulse, too. I swear I'll take care of Lanzhou, no matter how difficult it might be. I'm stationed far away in Libei, and the delivery of military supplies cannot be delayed. But I feel uneasy when he's out of my sight. What happened in Chazhou cannot keep happening. I have neither family nor close friends in Zhongbo, so I can only ask this of you. Shifu, because of what Lanzhou suffered in his youth, he prefers to keep things to himself. Even when he's injured or in pain, he doesn't say a word. But he considers you his father. As long as you're by his side, he'll take your feelings into consideration and show some regard for his own health. I have no other request. I only ask that you scold him a little, so he'll see the error of his ways. And the next time he does something like this, Shifu, you ought to give me a whipping. Jigong stood rooted to the spot, stupefied. He felt there was something unusual about these words, yet he couldn't put his finger on precisely what was wrong with them. He glanced toward the window and heard the light clink of a teacup from the other side of the bamboo blinds. Then all was quiet again. That would have been an even funnier place to use the word queer, but maybe it would have been a little bit too much. A queer atmosphere, if you will. The frogs in the pond had been fished out, and the courtyard was once again peaceful after dinner time. Xiao Qie, after feeding Snowcrust and Meng and having his own meal, went to have a bath. Shen Zichuan stood under the eaves and cupped a handful of the newly planted orange jasmine. The courtyard was empty, save for a low table set with snacks under the eaves, bathed in the evening glow. Shen Zichuan sat down and gazed out into the distance at the setting sun, lost in his thoughts. Skin damp from his bath, Xiao Qie walked out and crouched behind Shen Zichuan as he dried his hair. Hand still tugging at the branch of jasmine, Shen Zichuan looked back. Xiao Qie dipped his head and kissed him. The setting sun was a burnished gold, and the world was silent and still. Even the wind considerately left the courtyard to the two of them. Turning, Shen Zichuan pounced on Xiao Qie, knocking him to the ground. Leaning back against the doorframe, Xiao Qie hugged him tightly and pressed the tip of his nose to Shen Zichuan's cheek, saying fiercely, "You're pressing against my wounded heart." The drama. Shen Zichuan threw the pieces of crumpled orange jasmine into Xiao Qie's pocket and said, "Let me feel it." Xiao Qie did not. He grabbed hold of Shen Zichuan's wrists and pulled him closer. He was strong and fit, and it didn't strain him in the slightest to bear Shen Zichuan's weight. Even the way he sat was carefree and unrestrained, one foot propped on his knee. The two of them sat with their arms around each other as dusk turned to night. In truth, Xiao Qie had been dreadfully unhappy for the past half-month. Oh, hi, vase of peonies. I didn't see you before. They are just getting too cute now. Wait, did I already read that. In truth, Xiao Qie had been dreadfully unhappy for the past half-month. The third sand camp his imperial army had retaken had been given to Guo Weili. When Guo Weili had come for the handover, he had bumped into Gu Jin. Neither could stand the sight of each other, and the soldiers under their command had come to blows more than once. Xiao Qie swallowed this humiliation and took over Wu Ziyu's position in border camp, but arranging the transport and escort of supplies was far more difficult than he had imagined. He was ordered about by the commanding generals of the various camps on the front line. Upon return to the Libei homeland, he had to submit a full and detailed report of all his activities to Xiao Jiming. and beyond his work in the military tents, he had to make nice with the civilian merchants from Luoxia Pass and Huaizhou. Often, after drinking with these people through the night, he would have to ride off to another camp before the sun had even risen. But he had no intention of telling Shen Zichuan any of this. Xiaoqia was reminded of a folk song of the Hongyan Mountains. He didn't know the words, so he playfully hummed the melody. Shen Zichuan was asleep, buried in the delicate scent of the jasmine, his head resting against Xiaoqia's chest, and his fingers clutching the front of Xiaoqia's robe. Xiaoqia held him, humming until the night grew late, and he picked him up to carry him into their room. Shen Zichuan was still gripping his robe tightly. Xiaoqia bent over and blew lightly on his fingers, then crouched down and watched him for a moment before saying, "I'm still angry, you know." Opening his eyes a sliver, Shen Zichuan poked Xiaoqia's cheek and whispered, "Don't be. All you do is lie to me, you..." Xiaoqia was momentarily at a loss for words. Is our Gongza so easy to deceive? Bullying a pure and innocent young master. You're really something, you know. Shen Zichuan rolled over onto his stomach and faced Xiaoqia, nose to nose. Damn it, those eyes. Xiaoqia swallowed his indignation. He pinched Shen Zichuan's cheeks and said hoarsely, "Go on, keep acting cute with me. It's futile, Shen Lanzhou. If you get yourself stabbed again, I will promptly perish in Li Bei. I won't exist anymore, you hear me?" Shen Zichuan nodded obligingly. Xiaoqia leaned closer and pressed his forehead to Shen Zichuan's. "I have to go." Shen Zichuan didn't let go. "When will you be back?" Xiaoqia didn't know. He stroked Shen Zichuan's cheek. "Soon. I have so much still to do now, but the war should slow down once autumn rolls around." It was already midnight. Shen Zichuan released his grip and gazed at Xiaoqia. Never had Xiaoqia felt standing up to be so difficult. He swiftly put on his arm guard and let down the bed curtain. Finally, he lowered his hand and brushed the tip of Shen Zichuan's nose with a finger. "Sleep well, Lanzhou." Snowcrest galloped out of the city in the dark of night, with Meng following Xiaoqia as they soared northward toward the skies of Li Bei. Chenyang would meet him mid-journey. Xiaoqia had to head north to deliver supplies to the battlefields immediately. After reaching border camp, he would be able to close his eyes only an hour or two before his work began anew. As Xiaoqia was riding out of Cizhou, a donkey trotted across the border of Zhongbo. This donkey was carrying a man slumped across its back. Whether he was dead or alive was anyone's guess. A few hungry meows came from within the opening of his sleeve. The man opened his eyes with great difficulty, looked at the pitch-dark road ahead of him, and closed them once again. Wait, is that Yao and Yu? Didn't he have like a little kitten? Or wasn't he petting a kitten way back when we saw him, or am I like imagining that? It's gotta be Yao and Yu, right? With the sleeve full of cats. Because I remember something. I thought there was art of I thought the art of him when he found the chin, he was also like petting a kitten. Vase of peonies, it is just one cat, but I love to imagine that he does have a sleeve full of cats. Okay, it has to be Yao and Yu. Oh my god. Just to end a chapter like that right there. Okay. Well, I hope we get more of him in this volume and it doesn't just give us that little preview and then say goodbye for a while, because I'm going to be upset. There are 2 more chapters, and it's a little early, but it kind of makes sense to take a break now. So I'm going to go ahead and take my break, and I will be back in about 10 minutes for us to finish the volume. So see y'all in a moment. Hello, everyone. I have returned. Vase of Peonies, I saw you saying something about your novel. You got a nice comment and you were reading it, which is totally understandable. But I would love to read that as well. I think I think I have your AO3 account, but I forget right now. If you could, is it also a Vase of Peonies? And also, is the novel you're talking about on there, or is it on a different site? Either way, would love to read that. Um, so, um, oh, thank you, Henry. Also, you said you were vibing to the music. Thank YouTube's royalty-free music library, because I used to use music that was from Canva, where they have royalty-free music, and I got copyright claims on those videos, and it turns out you have to, like, upload a license and tell them that actually, like, you know, you are allowed to use it. And I got so fed up with having to do that. It was very frustrating. Um, okay, Vase, it is on AO3, and you're a vase of peonies everywhere. Okay, I need to actually check that out. Thank you. Yeah, the YouTube copyright free music is surprisingly good. Yeah, I have a lot of, like, not AO3 bookmarks, but I have a lot of pages from AO3 bookmarked as, like, I need to read this at some point. And then I do it with so many that I forget and I get overwhelmed. But I'm putting a pin in that for your story, Vase. And yeah, I feel like there was something else I was going to say, and it's completely out of my mind now. But oh my god, I can't believe there we we got the tiniest hint of Yao Wen Yu, and who knows if we'll get any more of that for the rest of the book. But we are on page 367 for chapter 145, which is called Beggar. Several days later, the new garrison troops of Tuzhou escorted a caravan of grain wagons into Chazhou. Fei Sheng returned from Chazhou, gave Shen Zichuan a full report on the happenings there, and handed over his records of the prices of goods in Huaizhou and Fanzhou. On top of that, in the time he'd been away, he had even gotten to the bottom of Lei Chongming and Lei Jingzhe's backgrounds. Lei Chongming was a native of Chazhou who had gotten his start as an armed escort. This much was common knowledge. Fei Sheng had made inquiries all over Chazhou with help from the shopkeepers in Jueshi. According to some of the older people in Chazhou who'd been around long enough to witness it, Lei Chongming had been making money in the flesh trade as early as the reign of Yongyi. Back then, both Dunzhou and Duanzhou saw proliferation of entertainment houses across their territories, heralding the rise of famous courtesans like Bai Cha, Shen Zichuan's mother. Lei Chongming had scoured the lands of Dongzhou, tricking naive women and selling them into these establishments as prostitutes. Later, Shen Wei ordered the closure of the brothels along the banks of the Chasha River, sending the businesses in Duanzhou into a drastic decline. Lei Chongming had no connections at the checkpoint leading into Duanzhou and was forced to make his living elsewhere. Yeah, this guy just keeps on sucking. But I'm excited that we're getting more of a download here. After scraping by for a time, Lei Chongming thought to resume his old trade. He capitalized on the reputation of the Zhu family, to whom he had married his younger sister, and went around making connections with officials in Zhongbo. The more he rubbed elbows, the more he noticed that these people dreaded the time in spring every year when the Chief Surveillance Bureau would make trips out to the various regions to conduct inspections and audits. The imperial censors had the authority to impeach, and thus the reviews of any officials involved would doubtless be affected by what the censors found. This was an important affair pertaining to their future promotions and placements. As such, they didn't dare do anything as rash as visit brothels at this time. This gave Lei Changming an idea. He set up an establishment called Mingshu Hall, the Hall of Famed Tomes, in Fanzhou, a poetry club and tea house on the surface. In actuality, he sent the decent women he collected to work there as prostitutes to bribe the various officials of Zhongbo. So, kind of the brothel version of like a speakeasy. This business didn't last long either, before Shenwei's people shuttered it. At this point in the record, Fei Sheng had made a note in the margin. Shenwei had placed spies and informers everywhere throughout the various prefectures. After marrying Bai Cha, he became more heavy-handed in his attempts to crush the brothels across Zhongbo. Lei Changming's Mingshu Hall hadn't been open a year before Shenwei wiped it off the map. Abducting and trafficking women of decent backgrounds was a crime punishable by law. To escape responsibility, Lei Changming left behind a subordinate to take the fall for him while he rushed to Dunzhou, where he offered Shenwei a fortune in gold and silver in order to extricate himself. Henry, Miaoyi Wenyu. A vase took all the pun power with Miaoyi Wenyu. Is that one was yours? Miaoyi Wenyu. That one was yours, vase? That's a really good one. He goes by so many names. After this incident, Lei Changming returned to his old ways of idling about doing nothing. He'd married at some point, but his wife and son passed early, and he didn't take a concubine. He had acquired a taste for assaulting children from his trafficking days, but he was too rough with them, and none of them survived for long. The way that sometimes Tong Jiuqing is just like, you're just reading something, and it's very matter of fact, and she's just like, by the way, this happened. Toward the end of the reign of Yongyi, Lei Changming took a job with the Yan clan of Hezhou as an armed escort, and subsequently got into the Yan clan's good graces. It was at this point that he began to enjoy a meteoric rise. There was no mention of a jade bead or earring in this record. Shen Zichuan closed the report and contemplated for a moment. It's strange. Children who wear earrings are either wealthy or noble. Even if Lei Changming was comfortable trafficking women and children from normal families in Zhongbo, he wouldn't have dared lay a finger on any of the heirs of the 8 great clans of Chudu. Master has guessed right. I heard whispers of this during my inquiries, but didn't wish to include it in the report without evidence, so I'll elaborate now. Fei Sheng stood beside the table and turned back to look at Li Xiong in the courtyard. I spoke to that lad, too, and I can more or less guess what happened. During the reign of Yongyi, Lei Changming saved the young master of the Yan clan, Yan Heru. As a boy, he did indeed wear an earring. He was a pretty child, too, said to be fair and delicate, the apple of the Yan clan's eye. Lei Changming brought young Master Yan back with him, and, well, as Master has witnessed, this man was an animal. He almost certainly harbored foul intentions toward young Master Yan. Shen Zichuan snapped his folding fan shut. But he didn't dare lay a hand on the boy. Fei Sheng continued. It just so happened that a member of the Shao clan serving in the Ministry of War was imprisoned at the time, and all the male descendants of the clan were sentenced to execution. In order to preserve their bloodline, the old matriarch of the Shao clan disguised the last grandson of lawful birth as a girl. This grandson was exiled and sent to do hard labor in Zhongbo, where he was unlucky enough to fall into the hands of Lei Changming. At this moment, Chao Tianya, who had seemingly covered his face with a book to nap, sat up. The Shao clan. A member of the Shao clan in the Ministry of War during the reign of Yongyi? You mean the Vice Minister, Shao Changbi? Fei Sheng clapped his hands. Right, that's the one. You know him? Chao Tianya leapt to his feet, momentarily stunned. Of course I know him. Master, I've told you before that I'm a son of the Chao clan, who also served in the Ministry of War. Shao Changbi and my father were fast friends. Not only that, Shao Changbi was an official, personally promoted by Grand Mentor Qi himself. But he wasn't a sociable fellow, so he hardly interacted with the Grand Mentor. He went on to marry the elder sister of the current Minister of War, Chen Zhen. Thanks to this connection, he had a narrow escape when everyone in the Eastern Palace was hunted down, and was spared the Empress Dowager's efforts to exterminate the Crown Prince's faction. Fei Sheng nodded. That much is true. But Shao Changbi wasn't friendly with the Hua and Pan factions either. To rid himself of Shao Changbi, Hua Siqian convinced Ji Lei to use the embroidered uniform guard to frame Shao Changbi as a participant in the Eastern Palace's treason, ensuring that all his family's possessions and properties would be confiscated and sealed off. This was near the end of the Yongyi years. Now Shen Zichuan understood. Lei Chongming didn't dare lay his hands on the young Yan Heru, so he had abused the lawful grandson of the Shao clan in the boy's place. The lawful grandson of the Shao clan was older than Yan Heru at the time, Fei Sheng noted, but even so, he was only 9 that year, and had been doted on by his family. Before the old matriarch met her end, she pleaded with all her old acquaintances to smuggle the child out of Chudu. No one could have foreseen that he would be captured by Lei Chongming upon arriving in Zhongbo. Lei Chongming was brutal with the children he took. For one, he was known to drink before doing the deed, which killed what little restraint he had. But secondly, he was wary of loose ends. Drag the dead child out and bury him, and the matter would be done with. It was Tai Yu who began asking around and found out about this. If I had to guess, this is also the reason behind Lei Chongming's falling out with the Yan clan. This was the first assignment Fei Sheng had handled for Shen Zichuan, and he was determined to do a flawless job. After wrapping up his findings on Lei Chongming, he gave his detailed report on Luomu of Chazhou. Shen Zichuan glanced at Chao Tianya as he listened, noting the man's distraction. Before Fei Sheng took his leave, he spared Chao Tianya a few words between the changing of shifts as he washed his hands. You don't need to ask. Fei Sheng rinsed the space between his fingers clean. Anything I learned regarding the lawful grandson of the Shao clan came from the bandits in Chazhou. I'm sure you already know this, but that child was nowhere as important as Yan Heru. Who would remember his fate all these years later? 8 or 9 out of 10 of the children who fell into Lei Chongming's hands wound up dead, and even if they didn't. Fei Sheng sighed with a complex mix of emotions. How could they go on? Chao Tianya made a show of shrugging his shoulders. Did I ask? I wasn't going to ask. Fei Sheng looked at him in disdain and gestured with the finger at the minimal distance between them. See this? The only reason you would waltz over here is if you had something to ask me. It's been years since it all happened. If it bothers you, you can imagine he's still alive. There is no imagining. Chao Tianya took a few strides down the steps and clasped his hands behind his head, squinting against the sunlight. He spoke with an air of nonchalance. If he's dead, he's dead. Lying 6 feet under is far more comfortable than scrabbling about up here. believe we were talking about Yao and Yu there, since Chao Tianya had asked Fei Sheng to find information about Yao and Yu. But there was a moment where I got confused because I thought Chao Tianya was like particularly concerned about the Xiao child. It might just be because like this scene followed discussing that, but I'm pretty sure that was about Yao Wenyu, who we know is on a donkey. We don't know when he's going to show up, but it's Shao, S-H-A-O. And there are so many characters in these books, but I don't know if we've ever heard anything about the Shao clan before this. Not that I can remember. At least not that particular person, Shao Changbi. I don't remember them at all. The end of the 7th month was just a few days off, whereupon wagons of grain would leave Tizhou and return with wagons of silver. Autumn was around the corner, and Zhou Gui worried the grain in Huaizhou would be bought up by others before they could make their purchase. Now that the money was as good as in their hands, Zhou Gui began consulting with his advisors. The business with Huaizhou needed to be settled as soon as possible. Shen Zichuan joined them in the study for the meeting. After listening for a time, he asked only one question. What does Mr. Chengfeng think? Kong Ling hesitated before speaking. As I said to my lord last night, sending our people to Huaizhou right now is too hasty. I don't believe it's a good idea. Zhou Gui, who was sitting in a lesser position beside Shen Zichuan, nodded. Chengfeng did indeed share this opinion when we were discussing the details last night. But Vice Commander, parts of Jueshi were struck by natural disasters this year, and the Provincial Administration Commissioner, Jiang Qingshan, has also been transferred away from the region. The areas suffering food shortages will have to purchase grain from other prefectures. Huaizhou is close to Chudu, and the autumn harvest is around the corner. I worry Jueshi will ink a deal with them before we do. Y'all give me 1 second, because I got a battery warning on my phone. My phone should be charging right now, so that's what I used to film with. So let me check something really quick. Sorry, I need to move a cable. Okay, should be good now. I didn't want my, the video to die before I was done. That would not be good. Okay. The areas suffering food shortages will have to purchase grain from other prefectures. Huaizhou is close to Chudu, and the autumn harvest is around the corner. Oh wait, I already read that part, yeah. I worry Jueshi will ink a deal with them before we do. Zhou Gui's worries were not unfounded. The granaries Cizhou had emptied to conduct this trade with Chazhou were Cizhou's emergency stores. Zhou Gui couldn't help but be anxious as he contemplated entering winter with a warehouse full of silver instead of grain. Over the past few days, Shen Zichuan had been planning a trip to Huaizhou, yet he hesitated, not only for fear of acting too hastily, but also because Chudu still had yet to issue transfer papers for Jiang Qingshan. Regardless of whether he was sent back to Jueshi or assigned somewhere else, Jiang Qingshan's placement would affect Cizhou's trade deals. If Jiang Qingshan was deployed to Huaizhou, Whatever dealings they managed to secure with the official presiding there would likely be null and void. Shen Zichuan was in a quandary. Your Excellency and Mr. Chung Feng's concerns are not without merit. I too have been pondering the issue of Huaizhou for the last few days. If we're to follow our original plan, it would be better to make this deal as soon as possible. But as things stand, we must also consider how to avoid Chudu's scrutiny. Kongling nodded in agreement. Just so. Our silver wagons must travel on Li Bei's roads. And though he probably won't stop us, we'll need the heir of Li Bei's permission for passage. We're borrowing the roads of the Li Bei armored cavalry and converting this silver to grain to replenish their supplies as well. So for now, Li Bei will be all too happy to oblige. But one thing still worries me. How do we get by Luosha Pass? The Luosha Pass garrison troops remain under direct control of Chudu, and they lack for neither grain nor money. Li Bei has a history with them and shares some rapport, but Suzhou does not. What do we do? Given Shen Zichuan's relationship with Xiao Qie, if it truly came down to it, you could probably ask a favor from Luosha Pass that relied on the chain of friendly ties. But this option was built on the assumption that Xiao Fengshu and Xiao Jiming were willing to acknowledge Shen Zichuan's involvement with their son and brother. Otherwise, relying on Xiao Qie alone. With apologies, the second young master didn't yet have that much prestige. In asking this question, Kongling was tactfully conveying that they were not that close to Li Bei. If even borrowing the roads of Li Bei resulted in a favor owed, borrowing their troops in the future was by no means a sure thing. When Xiao Qie had first arrived in Suzhou, Zhou Gui and Kongling had presumed he was going back to succeed his father and elder brother and carve out his own distinguished career. But if news from Li Bei was to be believed, Xiao Qie was presently lower in rank than any of the commanding generals on the battlefield. It wasn't that a general in charge of supplies wasn't important, but there was simply no comparison when it came to reputation, prestige, or advancement. They remained talking in the study until dusk, but failed to reach a conclusion. When Shen Zichuan returned to his manor, he found Ding Tao and Li Xiong waiting to receive him at the entrance. Ding Tao hadn't returned to Li Bei, nor was he included in any of the guard rotations. He spent his days practicing shadow boxing at Ji Gong's side with Li Xiong. They trained in the morning and were idle in the afternoon, and so the two of them ran wild, playing to their heart's content for the entirety of the 7th month. Ding Tao was no longer upset about being left behind in Suzhou, and he had forgotten all about Chen Yang and Gu Jin. There was no one to nag him when he ate sweets at night, and it was only when he got a toothache that Xiao Tianya took time to scold him. You know, if there was one thing I wasn't expecting, it was Li Xiong to just become part of the group. I didn't know it would go down like this. Gongzi, there are quite a number of beggars in the city today, Ding Tao commented, tagging along behind Shen Zichuan. They're skin and bones from starvation. People are saying they came from Dancheng. Lord Yu went out in the morning to buy a whole sack of steamed buns, and a fight broke out over them. Shen Zichuan paused in his steps. Seeing that the sky was still bright, he said to Qiao Tianya, "Let's go take a look." Suzhou had just started reorganizing its household register. Newly arrived migrants were instructed to present themselves at the prefectural yamen to report their name and place of origin, a measure designed to prevent roving bandits from sneaking into the city. Zhou Gui had assigned clerks to handle the registration, but Shen Zichuan's interest was piqued at the mention of Dancheng. He wanted to see it in person. Upon arrival, they spotted Yu Xiaozai handing out steamed buns, just as Ding Tao had described. Fei Sheng and Chao Tianya stepped forward to help, and Yu Xiaozai thanked them repeatedly. Yo Jing, Shen Zichuan spoke gently. Bring them to the Yamen. There will be people there giving out steamed buns and porridge. There's no need for you to feed them out of your own pocket. Yu Xiaozai had come to Cizhou on foot, with hardly a copper to his name. He'd lost his official position, and was unwilling to work for Zhou Gui, so he'd remained in Shen Zichuan's manor, relying on his charity. He lived minimally, and earned a small amount providing literary services to others. Now, the few taels of silver he'd managed to save up had all been exchanged for steamed buns. There are only so many rations the Yamen can distribute every day, Yu Xiaozai said. Most of those who come late in the day are the old, weak, sick, or widowed. It's too pitiable for them to go hungry. In any case, money is merely a worldly possession. Shen Zichuan found something suspicious about this influx of migrants. Dancheng was one of the 8 cities surrounding Chudu. They'd encountered no natural disasters this year. In fact, they'd provided supplies to Han Jin's 8 great battalions. The Imperial Army had enjoyed a feast when they passed by the city. How could there suddenly be so many migrants from there? Chao Tianya was handing out steamed buns to the commoners, one at a time, when he heard a commotion behind him. Shen Zichuan looked over and saw several ruffians cursing as they tried to pull away another man's donkey. Donkey? Are we here already? With the donkey? Seeing Shen Zichuan's impassive expression, Fei Sheng promptly gathered up another handful of steamed buns and waved the embroidered uniform guard forward to break up the fight. "What are you doing over there making such a racket?" he yelled. One of the ruffians had seen the embroidered uniform guard at work before. As he was hauled away with both legs dragging on the ground, he blurted in panic, "My good sirs, we're not the ones at fault. These guys said they wanted to sell the donkey, but they wouldn't give it to me after I paid up. Tell me, isn't this a scam?" At this, Fei Sheng turned and rebuked the men. "Don't you even check who's in charge here before trying to swindle people in broad daylight? Give him the donkey." The band of unkempt men timidly tugged the beast a few steps on the rope halter and stuffed the end into Fei Sheng's hands. The donkey brayed, objecting to such handling. From behind the cluster of men, a lone hand slapped the ground, murmuring, "That's my donkey." Fei Sheng had sharp ears, but he didn't want to complicate the issue any further. He pretended not to have heard. One of the ruffians stomped on the hand so hard it clenched into a fist from the pain, and pounded on the ground to object. But in the next moment, someone must have pulled the hand's owner from behind it, because it vanished from sight. As Fei Sheng handed the donkey over to the man who claimed to have bought it, he felt a slight weight on his shoe. He looked down and saw a kitten covered in dirt. Scooping it up, Fei Sheng called, "Taozi, a little playmate." Yet before Fei Sheng could finish, that hand appeared out of the crowd again, exposing only the tips of its fingers. It clawed at the ground until bloody mud darkened the edges of its nails. My cat." A man crawled over, his forehead scraping the ground as he struggled forward. The ruffian behind him saw Fei Sheng turn and hurriedly dragged the man back by the ankles to try to hide him from view. Now that Fei Sheng was looking, he could see the man's legs were in a terrible state, as if someone had broken both of them. Oh no. Oh no indeed. Very oh no. We only have one more chapter. This is on page 379, chapter 146, It's called Yuan Zhuo. Is Yao Wen Yu Yao Yuan Zhuo? I am always forgetting everybody's like courtesy names, but I'm gonna go with that. Ding Tao, Shen Zichuan said suddenly. Ding Tao tucked his notebook away and leapt over the fray to grab the arm of the nearest ruffian. What are you hiding? Move away so our young master can see. Noting their shifting eyes and their hemming and hawing, Fei Sheng thundered. What? Is this donkey not yours? The sharp-eyed Ding Tao yelled, Gongzi, there's a man on the ground. The men from the embroidered uniform guard stepped forward and surrounded the whole tableau. Most of these men were local thugs from Dancheng. They cowered when they saw the hostile expressions of the embroidered uniform guard, their fear heightened by the blades displayed at their sides. Before Fei Sheng could give any further orders, the rogues dispersed, revealing a man lying on the ground. Yu Xiaozai lifted the hem of his robe and stepped in closer for a look. Bending over, he exclaimed in shock, Why is there so much blood? Quick, help this man up and call for a physician. Fei Sheng squatted down. His legs can't be saved. Someone broke them. The man didn't lift his eyes from the ground. He struggled to prop himself on his elbows long enough to rasp, The cat is mine. Embarrassed, Fei Sheng put the little cat down before the man, explaining, I thought it was a stray. Is this donkey yours too? You are not from Dancheng, are you? The man didn't answer. He dropped his head and started coughing. As he covered his lips, Fei Sheng caught a glimpse of the handkerchief in his hand. Though it was dirty, it was an exquisite piece. The quality and material were not something a commoner could afford. The fingers holding it, too, were long and slender, without calluses. This was not the hand of a man who performed manual labor. Fei Sheng's attitude changed instantly. Sir, let me help you up. You can't walk on these legs of yours, and you're in such a bad way. We need to have a physician look at you as soon as possible. The man clenched his fists, and his coughing intensified. The handkerchief was stained with blood. He was injured and wretched, yet his etiquette was impeccable. With his eyes still lowered, he said, I wouldn't dare put you to the trouble. Thank you for offering. Yu Xiaozai saw the flat pouch hanging from the man's waist and knew the stranger to be a scholar. His concern only grew as he turned to Shen Zichuan. Vice Commander Shen, he doesn't seem to be a wicked person to me. Why don't we... Vice Commander Shen? The man's tone suddenly changed. Shen Zichuan? The surrounding embroidered uniform guard promptly gripped the hilts of their sabers. Shen Zichuan gestured for them to back down. Are we acquainted? The man seemed suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. He tried to speak, but merely coughed up more blood. His throat bobbed, and his coughing worsened as his pale, trembling fingers curled in the dirt, gouging desperate tracks as he murmured over and over, Shen Zichuan, it's you. Chao Tianya turned. He was sure he'd heard this voice before. Shen Zichuan slowly crouched and looked into the man's face. The beggar moved the handkerchief covering his mouth, and with great effort, propped himself up on his elbows. His eyes seemed to blaze, filled with the madness of someone staking everything on a single cast of the dice. He lifted his head. Instead of wailing or breaking into hysterics, as everyone seemed to expect, he let out a whisper-soft laugh. That laugh was like the ripple of spring water, fleeting and ephemeral, before it was quickly subsumed in the crackle of an endless inferno. This man had been swallowed by a raging fire that consumed his unbending pride and free spirit along with everything else in his life, turning an immortal, free from worldly cares, into a pile of blackened ash. At last, Chao Tianya recognized him. Vase, oh no, somebody's gonna have to take care of him now. I wonder who could be. He carried still that misty memory of two kindred spirits playing the chin under the willows in a soft green spring. Now, that upright, spring-green young master had fallen into ruin, filthy, alone, and unable even to walk. Just like that, the unpolished jade Hai Liang Yi and the Yao clan had cherished and safeguarded for half a lifetime had been ground into the mud. Chao Song Yue was suddenly at a loss. He felt instinctively that he shouldn't continue staring at Yao Wenyu like this. But yet again, he saw himself in this man. Both of them had once lived as immortals of the Moon Palace, as remote and lofty as the goddess who presided there. Chao Song Yue had fallen. That dashing, fan-holding young master of a prominent clan had turned into the blade-wielding, jaded Chao Tianya. He had thought their chance encounter fleeting serendipity. He never expected that a scant half a year later they would meet again, as fellow sufferers commiserating in the same misfortune. The word commiserate was truly an agonizing one. Chao Tianya hastily averted his gaze and didn't dare look again until Yao Wenyu was helped away. It had grown late, and the lights left burning in the house provided only a dim glow. The physician's apprentice came out with a prescription in hand, and Fei Sheng accepted it, then turned it over to his subordinate to collect the ingredients. The guards were all clustered in the corridor. Ding Tao, unusually well-behaved, cradled the kitten. Fei Sheng forced a smile and said to Chao Tianya, "Who would have expected to find him like this? What was there for him to say?" Legends of unpolished jade Yuanzhou, Yao Wenyu, had circulated for years in Shudu. In all of them, this man was hailed as a fallen immortal, a wayward genius living among men. Even Fei Sheng, who had never rubbed elbows with the literati, knew him as a household name. Who could have imagined the free and unfettered wanderer of those breathless stories would be reduced to scrabbling in the dirt? He was in a more miserable state than even Yu Xiaozai had been when he arrived half-dead in Suzhou. Yu Xiaozai had already wept once while the physician was working, and now he was facing the wall, overwhelmed with grief as he said around his sobs, How can they ever answer for this to the Grand Secretary?" Fei Sheng consoled him stiffly. "The ways of the world are unpredictable. Yojing, take care. You'll make yourself ill carrying on like this." Chao Tianya leaned against a pillar in the corridor, face hidden in shadow. He didn't say a word. They hadn't stood for long when Kong Ling walked the physician out and beckoned them over. Chao Tianya hung back to ask the physician a few questions. The physician answered him truthfully. Chao Tianya fell silent for a few moments, then turned aside to let an attendant walk the physician to the gates. Bamboo blinds had been drawn down in the room and blocked out some of the candlelight. A screen partitioned the room in two. Chen Zichuan sat on one side, speaking to Zhou Gui in hushed tones. On seeing the guards enter, he said, "Fei Sheng, you're on night watch. Ding Tao, go back to your courtyard and sleep. There's no need to worry, Yojing. The kitchen is brewing the medicine as we speak." Yu Xiaozai sat on the edge of his seat. After a moment of silence, he began. "Is Yao Gongzi?" Kong Ling was a perceptive and empathetic man. He knew it would be better not to discuss the details here. Bemoaning Yao Wenyu's fate or showing him pity was, to Yao Wenyu, torture by 1,000 cuts. He got to his feet to lead Yu Xiaozai away. "It's already late, Yojing. Yao Gongzi has only just arrived. Let him rest for a night. It won't be too late for us to come visit him again tomorrow." With that, he turned back to bow toward Chen Zichuan and addressed Zhou Gui. "We still have some matters to discuss in the study later tonight. Your Excellency, let's walk out together. At this gentle reminder from Kong Ling, Yu Xiaozai followed suit and rose to take his leave. Before he left, he cast a final glance at the inner room and saw the shadows of the trees intercutting the flickering gloom from the candlelight. The man within was silent. He thought again of Hai Liang Yi, and his eyes burned. Holding back a long sigh, he hurried across the threshold. The night air was chilly, and the veil the moonlight cast over the flowers and plants in the courtyard made them appear sickly and listless. The wind chimes hanging under the eaves swayed gently with the wind, and metal clappers clanging against the sides. Yao Wenyu lay on the bed, his consciousness scattering with the sound of the chimes. As his mind drifted, he returned to Chudu. Misty rain pervaded the capital city. Yao Wenyu, draped in mourning attire, had sent Hai Liang Yi to his final rest on Mount Bodhi. This mountain was the burial site of Yao Wenyu's paternal grandfather, and now it was the burial site of his own teacher. He stood in the drizzle, unable to see the green of the mountain and unable to find the way back. The Yao clan had produced many scholars of great talent for the nation. They had been a bold and vigorous force in successive reigns of the Zhou Empire, the scholarly mainstay within the high walls of the noble clans. During the Guangcheng Emperor's reign, Old Master Yao had cast aside the clan's traditions and renounced the old prejudices against family status. He reached out to the descendants of common households who were denied opportunities elsewhere, and the Imperial College flourished. The Yao clan began exploring a different path. Yet this path had come to a premature end at the hands of the Empress Dowager Hua Hewei and her brother Hua Siqian. By Yao Wenyu's father's generation, the Yao clan was in decline. Although they retained their prestige and influence, it was no longer what it had been during Old Master Yao's time. The nail in the coffin was the Yao clan's dearth of descendants in this generation. They only had one son, Yao Wenyu. The rest were all descendants from collateral branches of the clan, and not a single one had distinguished themselves in the spring imperial examinations. In recent years, the 8 clans had all undergone a change in heads and members, and the Yao clan no longer commanded the same level of respect from the other 7. Most of the young members of the Yao clan who did serve as officials held sinecures with practically no real responsibilities. None were third-rank ministers in esteemed positions like the men of the Wei clan. Although Yao Wenyu was a student under Hai Liang Yi and friends with many of the literati, he held no official position, nor had he married Commandery Princess Zhao Yue of the Fei clan, as everyone expected. Other than the extraordinary literary talent for which he was renowned, he had nothing at all to his name. In the end, even his reputation had forsaken him. He was like the falling leaves on the mountain, reduced to dirt in the changing of seasons, utterly worthless. Qiao Tianya lifted the bamboo blinds and stepped back to let Shen Zichuan inside. Shen Zichuan sat in the chair the physician had previously occupied for his examination. As the candlelight flickered, he spoke. "You've been poisoned. It won't do for you to continue living out there, exposed to the elements. If it's agreeable to you, you can stay in my home. My teacher and yours viewed each other as colleagues, and you are old friends with Sa'an. There's no need for you to stand on ceremony." Yao Wenyu's freshly washed face was as calm as a still lake as he listened to the wind chimes outside. After several moments, he answered, "You needn't be so tactful. I came to Suzhou to seek refuge under your leadership, Vice Commander." Shen Zichuan rested his folding fan on his knees. At the moment, I'm relying on others' charity myself. I'd only be so bold as to call you a brother. I couldn't presume to be your master. It seems Tuzhou has you to thank for its revival, Vice Commander. Yao Wenyu started coughing again. The consecutive traumas inflicted upon his body had been meant to kill him. He was a scholar, not a soldier. Eradicating the lingering malady that had taken root in him would be difficult, if not impossible. He was terribly ill, and much thinner than he'd been half a year ago. He clutched his handkerchief, covering his mouth for a moment before continuing. I heard about the Vice Commander's exploits on my journey here. You aren't making a grab for the 6 prefectures of Zhongbo. You seek to obtain Chudu itself. Once you have established trade routes with Chazhou and Huaizhou, Suzhou will have direct access to Libei's trade market in the northeast, and you can keep the grain routes of Qidong in check in the southeast. 2 major military forces of Great Zhou will have to pass under the Vice Commander's eyes. How they fight, and when they fight, will all lie in your hands. Shen Zichuan nudged open his folding fan with his fingertips and set it on the armrest of the chair, but said nothing. What's more, this trade route is unique in your geographical position. If the Vice Commander decides to establish a township along this route, you will effectively secure Chudu's north, south, and east sides. The 8 great battalions have limited military strength. By then, it will prove impossible for Chudu to break through your siege on 3 sides without assistance from Qidong. Yao Wenyu cast a sidelong glance at Shen Zichuan. The Vice Commander is a visionary man, planning now for years down the road. Shen Zichuan pinned his gaze on Yao Wenyu. If not for the fact that this man was in such a pathetic state after his attempted murder, Shen Zichuan himself might have taken his life. He had prepared countless explanations for others regarding the trade routes between the prefectures of Suzhou, Chazhou, and Huaizhou, but Yao Wenyu had easily divined his true motive. Cut Chudu off from its direct route northeast to Libei, while using Chazhou to contain Hezhou and obstruct Qidong's supply routes in the south. Yao Wenyu was right. Shen Zichuan wanted to surround Chudu. I love how he came here just to kind of tell everybody Shen Zichuan's exact motive. He just sees right through him. Qi Juyan might not give you time. Yao Wenyu couldn't suppress his coughing, covering his mouth with the handkerchief again and again. She's watching every move you make from Qidong. She'll see through it eventually. If this gamble of yours is successful, all's well that ends well. But if it fails, you'll be trapped between Chudu and Qidong. When your enemies come knocking on 2 fronts, even if Li Bei is willing to deploy troops to help you, they cannot hold off the Biansha horsemen and fight the garrison troops of Qidong simultaneously. Your current lack of military might is the fatal chink in your armor. That's why you're set on connecting Suzhou and Chazhou, reorganizing the household registers, and taking in migrants, for the sake of quickly establishing an army under your command. Shen Zichuan snapped his fan shut and said with a smile, Yao Yuanzhua's reputation is truly well-deserved. But with your brilliance, how did you end up wandering in Zhongbo? If you wish to accomplish great things, the climate in Chudu now could not be better. Whether it's the Empress Dowager or the Grand Secretariat, all of them are better able to afford your talents than I, Shen Lanzhou. Yao Wenyu struggled to sit up. Chao Tianya stepped forward to help him, putting a pillow behind his back for support. Yao Wenyu didn't once glance at Chao Tianya, as though he didn't recognize him. Don't stab me like that. Don't stab me in the heart like that. Also, hello, Elsie. Thank you for coming in and saying hi. Long fingers clutching his handkerchief, he turned his head aside and coughed again. The muffled sound persisted for a very long time. He stared at the shadows dancing over the wall and rasped. Xue Yanqing, in his support for the heir apparent, coerced the Grand Secretariat and the Empress Dowager, and schemed to lead the Imperial College into pushing for reforms in Chudu. But it is my belief that Great Zhou is already beyond remedy. Rather than continue to make incremental changes for the sake of restoration, why not tear it down and rebuild from scratch? The throne sits empty. The Zhou Empire has lost its deer, and all under heaven may chase after it. Even a commoner like Lei Changming had the ambition to crown himself king. By the time Chudu's reforms are put to action, people from across the land will surely rise in rebellion. The fight for the crown is a foregone conclusion. The Imperial Li clan is powerless against the will of the heavens. Yao Wenyu turned back and studied Shen Zichuan through the dimming light. The fire that had rekindled in his eyes burned with complex emotions. He said slowly and deliberately, "Anyone in the world can sit on the throne. The Li clan could. So why not you, Shen Zichuan?" Shen Zichuan held his folded fan before him and replied coldly, "My aspirations lie elsewhere." "You can't fool me," Yao Wenyu said, voice low. "You are walking this path already." "Perhaps I'll help someone else onto the throne," Shen Zichuan smiled. "There is more than one person in this world with the surname Li." I was wondering about that. When Zhongbo fell 6 years ago, you lost everything. 6 years later, you suffered defeat in Chudu and lost it all again. In another 6 years, Yao Wenyu's lowered eyes were distant. Will you still be willing to place your life and destiny in the hands of another? You are completely unsuited to be an obedient servant of the state. By the way, there's art. There is absolutely incredible art. I just realized, like, what I was looking at. Like, we've got a... Look at this. There's like a... what is it? It's not Go. In Chinese, Go is Wei Qi, I think. So there's like a Wei Qi board and all these people down on it. That is amazing. Absolutely incredible art to end this volume. Oh, there's only one more page. Are you serious? Okay. Ugh. Being subjected to the control of others has already become the greatest indignity of your life. You won't stand for it again. The atmosphere within the room shifted abruptly. Shen Zichuan grasped his folding fan. Although he was quiet, he looked as though he could kill the man before him in a heartbeat, without a single qualm. His expressive eyes betrayed nothing. The wind chimes outside the window tinkled, and bleak shadows of rustling trees fell upon the edge of his robes, disappearing beneath his feet. Shen Zichuan smiled. Since Xiansheng is willing to play for my team, then there is nothing we may not discuss. Chao Tianya, serve the tea. Yao Wenyu accepted the tea and skimmed the surface with the lid, but did not drink. His wrist was the same pale color as the teacup, but it was piteously thin and frail. He gazed at the floating tea leaves and said, self-mocking, "No need to call me Xiansheng. I lost to Xue Xiuzhuo in Chudu, had both my legs broken, and nearly lost my life. Didn't you ask me why I came here?" He was silent for a while. "Because, win or lose, live or die, I will finish this game of chess with Xue Xiuzhuo." That's how the book ends. That's it. That's the ending. Um, so, what? Wait, what's that? Oh my god, 2 Lanzhous now? What do you mean, Henry? Um, I I wonder I wonder why I wonder why Yao when you is like not I don't think he's not recognizing Chao Tianya. I think he's not acknowledging Chao Tianya for a reason. I don't know, maybe it's just like I don't know, maybe it's like I don't want you to see me like this, or it's something else, I'm really not sure, but I feel like surely he recognizes him. Like he has been super injured and messed up, but like I don't think he would not recognize him. So I'm like very curious about that, but I was not expecting him to see, you know what? This is the thing. They weren't really close. They just had some moments together, but I still would be surprised that he just like wouldn't recognize him at all. I could be wrong, but like it just seems a little bit weird. But it just occurred to me that like um Tang Ching, I feel like everything that like she set up this thing where Yao Wenyu is described as like, oh, he's a renowned scholar, but he doesn't really get involved in things politically. He's sort of like he would sort of not voice his opinion or not put himself in the middle of things on purpose, I guess. But like I feel like we've had so much setup where he hasn't really been very involved, and all of a sudden it's like turns out he has some plans of his own. And he completely saw through Shen Zichuan. And we just seemingly learned about Shen Zichuan's ideas of what to do with Li Xiong. That's all I can gather from that little bit. And I was thinking about that, but I wasn't specifically thinking that like Shen Zichuan was like, I want to put this boy on the throne. So I'm like, oh, oh. Um, yeah, Henry, he's not doing well mentally. Like yeah, no, that makes sense. He doesn't have the bandwidth for that right now. That totally makes sense. Um, wow, you're so right, Henry. It is really fun that Xiao Tianya is the more sentimental one. The twinkier one is colder and aloof. It seems like it seems like Tang Ching is into that sort of dynamic. The the twinkier one is colder and aloof. Um oh my gosh. Okay, so I don't know what yeah, it's just a really it's a good dynamic. It works well. And I feel like there is I'm sure Chao Tianya and Yao and Yu are going to be like a little bit different overall in the vibes of their dynamic than Chao Chia and Shen Zichuan, but there's definitely like a sort of a similarity there. Um, I can't believe it though that this is we we're gonna come back to this story in like 4 months. Uh, I knew this was what I was getting into. Oh, do we want to take a look at the cover of the next volume? If I remember correctly, the cover of the next volume is wild. So hold on. Um, so this is our our gay girl volume from what I can gather. Um, so yeah, that's what we have. That's something we have to look forward to. um, I also like actually the art on the front cover of this with the people down here. It reminds me of the art that we just looked at with the people on the board. Um, yep, we'll be there in like 4 months. Also, it's been driving me nuts. This keeps happening to like every single Seven Seas book that I have. Um, the I don't know if you could see this, but the like cover art starts peeling on the bottom. It like starts there's like a plastic, I don't know, layer that has the art on it and it starts peeling off. And I know it's because I'm holding up the book a lot, but I'm just like, you should not do this. Like these books are not cheap. Like they should not be doing that. But you know, Seven Seas, we tolerate so much from them, I guess, because it's worth it. I guess I don't know. Um, so that was volume 4 of Changjin-jo, and next Monday I will be reading volume 1 of Case File Compendium. Yeah, I so we had that to look forward to. Probably going to be a total change of pace, a total change of tone. It's going to be just like whiplash. Um like I feel like even if we had read Case File after Remnants of Filth, it would still be kind of a whiplash. I could be wrong, but I'm anticipating this to be like meat bun, but it's gonna be meat bun on a different level. I'm very ready though. Um, I've seen the other covers, Henry. Volume 6 cover I did not look at very hard because I was like, I don't want to look at that very hard. Volume 7 cover, I also kind of tried to like not think about it too much, but I saw it and I was like, okay. I'm not going to say what it is. I dig it. It's a good cover. Um, I seriously love the thing with this series where the covers are like alternating in black and white. It's very cool. Um, yeah, so I I can't believe we are here. This was such a good ending of a volume. Um, it's it's kind of sad to end the volume where Xiaoqia and Shenza Chuan aren't together, but at least they were able to get together again, however briefly, like before we ended. So that was nice. Um, Tong Jo Ching Genlong chess formationed you into simping for Sa'an. Not that you needed to be Genlonged. Yes. We did get a little love scene, at least. It's I saw someone say that like it feels like the end of every single book in this series, like it ends with a love scene, and I was like, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Like, I feel like it's gonna be weird the first time that doesn't happen. Or it might just keep happening. Who knows? So, if you don't already know my streaming schedule coming up because of the holidays, I'm starting Case File next Monday. And then Wednesday is Christmas Eve day, so I will be taking off that day. And then I'll read the second stream of Case File on the Monday after that. And then that Wednesday is New Year's Eve day, I believe. I'm also taking off that day. So we're going to have like 2 weeks in a row where I just stream on Monday. And then we will be back to the normal schedule in the new year. Yeah. So I'm I definitely like what I'm gonna have to do with this like 4 volumes alternating thing is definitely when it comes close to time for us to get back into um this series, I'm gonna have to do like a little bit of rereading just to remind myself like where we are and everything that's happened. Um I've taken some notes, so that will help too. But yeah, I'm gonna have to like every time we switch, I'm gonna be rereading a little bit because otherwise I will show up and just completely like have no idea what's happening. So yeah, you don't want that. You want me to reread. You want me to know what's happening. Um, but yeah, I've had a blast with this series so far. I can't wait to start Case File, and then I can't wait eventually to continue with this. So yes, watch my own streams on double speed. That's probably how I'm gonna do it, to be honest. Um, because it's like I do find it helpful having audio in addition to reading something. And if there's no other, I don't think there's anyone else who's read this series, so it's gonna have to be me. um, so yeah, yes, Henry, I could put them on while cooking or cleaning. That's a good idea. So I've got to go, but thank y'all so much for coming, and thank you so much for being here for the series. If you're joining me for Case File, then I will see you on Monday. So have a good one. Have a good rest of your week. Bye.